Hello and welcome to Tech Simplified TV. In last episode, we have discussed about different components of power dissipation in a CMOS circuit. If power dissipation is a concern, we must try to minimize it. This is called power optimization. Today, we will discuss about different techniques applied at the different abstraction level in CMOS design cycle. So stay tuned and stay focused till the end of the video. Now let's take a look at the pointers we are going to discuss in today's episode. First, low power design methodologies. Next, power reduction design space. After that, what are power states? Next, voltage scaling, multi-voltage scaling, power gating, clock tree optimization and clock gating, dual or multi or variable VTH MOSFET, transistor stacking, special cells and power optimization. This is the first slide on this topic. There is another slide on this same topic. The special cells and power optimization 2. After that, interconnect and power optimization. And finally, tools and power optimization. So today we will discuss how power is optimized in CMOS technology. Now let's move to the next slide. Low power design methodologies. First, what is the importance of power optimization? Why we at all think about power optimization? There are multiple points. First, packaging and its cost. When current flows to the circuit, power is applied, current flows, and the circuit works. Heat is generated. That is the standard procedure. That heat must not retain within the chip. Otherwise, its performance and longevity will get hampered. That's a reliability issue. We have discussed about impact of heat in reliability episode. You can watch that. So that heat needs to be dissipated, and that gets dissipated through packaging. Packaging is the chip or the die where the circuit is fabricated. The CMOS circuit is fabricated. That is covered. At the same time, there are provisions which basically makes contact between the die and the external world. So that packaging is very important in case of IC fabrication. Now that extra heat or the generated heat get dissipated through packaging. If we cannot optimize the power, it will hamper the device performance, and to handle it, we have to upgrade packaging or we have to invest a lot of money and research in that area. Overall, the cost will increase. So power optimization is important when we consider about packaging. That is one point. Next, power supply rail design. Power supply rail, they run to the chip. They provide power connections from one corner to other corner. If power dissipation is not optimized and that becomes out of proportion, then power supply rail design also has to be changed, because a huge portion of power get dissipated in power rails. Chip and system cooling cost. Since the chip or the system is getting heated, we must try to reduce the temperature, since the heat is just not good for the performance of the circuit and longevity of the devices. So we need to reduce the heat. That cooling system and its cost will increase. Whatever power goes inside, that comes out as heat basically. So noise immunity and system reliability, that is also impacted by power dissipation. Now battery life, we have discussed it in the first episode of this series. These all are example of portable systems, smartwatch, tab, mobile. If we do not optimize the power, unnecessary power dissipation will impact the device or the product reliability. These devices are designed in a way that it works for a long time based on the battery. So power dissipation is higher. User required to charge it frequently. That is not desirable in a portable system. So battery life is another point. These are the points for which power optimization is most important. It's so impactful. We need to optimize the power. Next, in VLSI design circuit, speed has been considered as the performance metric. Now, power consideration has become ultimate design criteria in portable application. Aim of this application is to maximize battery lifetime within minimum power. That is in favor of portable systems. LPD, that is low power design, also need to reduce the power in high-end system with huge integration density and thus improve the speed of operation. low power design methodologies, they need to reduce the power because the design is aimed to work at low power. These are high-end systems with huge integration density. A huge number of devices are packed in a die and thus improve the speed of operation. Digital system design is spread over multiple steps from system to process level. So we know that digital system design is not a single step thing. It's a multiple steps like system, algorithm, architecture, then circuit, then device. First the system is defined, then algorithm is defined, then architecture, then circuit level, then device level. In case of fabrication, first the devices are fabricated in a way that it constitutes the circuit and that defines the architecture, and algorithm is defined based on that how it will work, and that actually constitutes the total system. Digital system design is spread over multiple steps, and if we want to optimize power specifically for low power design, it's not a single step work. It means we have to implement this low power methodology at every step of design. So the method should be applied over all steps, and today we will discuss that. It's very important to have knowledge about power distribution so the blocks or parts consuming fraction of power could be clearly optimized for saving power. We have to have very good understanding of each step and how power is distributed and how we can reduce that power or optimize that power at each step. We are done with this slide. We will move to the next slide. Power reduction design space. So here we will discuss at which space, at which step, which kind of measure we can take. We have used color code. This is system level. So power reduction through system integration. Utilize low system clocks. Clock is connected to every sequential component of the whole design. So clock is one part which consumes huge power. We will see that. Using low system clock can help. Use high level of integration, that is huge number of devices. That helps. Integration of off-chip memories like ROM, RAM, etc. and other ICs such as digital and analog peripherals. So they are not off-chip now. If we integrate them, that will reduce power. These are the measures we can take at system level. Now power reduction by algorithm level. Minimizing the number of operation. If we can minimize the number of operation, then obviously if each and every operation usage of power is less than wastage of power is less. So minimizing the number of operation, that reduces the number of hardware resources. Data coding for reduce the switching activity. We have seen that switching activity contributes in dynamic power dissipation. So if we can reduce switching activity by the data coding method, related dynamic power dissipation will be less. Minimizing number of operation is one method that actually reduces number of hardware resources, and data coding to reduce switching activity. That can be done at algorithm level. Third is architecture level. Power reduction through architecture model. Power management by shutting down unused blocks. Like when we are living in a house, to save electricity, what we do? We save power at domestic level by the room we are not using, just switch off the power there. We are not using any kind of light or fan in that room. That's a very fundamental method we use in our domestic life. Here, it's basically power getting system. A block is not getting used. Just don't use power in that block. Although it requires some extra logic to incorporate, because if that block is in idle mode or sleep mode, that is, it's not working at all, then we have to have a control unit which will actually pull it back from the sleep mode when required. So that extra logic is also have to involve to save the power. So low power architecture based on parallelism and pipelining, etc. Memory partitioning with selectively enabled blocks. Reduction of the number of global buses. Global buses are wider and they run for a long length. We have discussed that. They goes for a long distance. So if we reduce the number of global buses, that reduces the power dissipation. Minimization of instruction set for simple decoding and execution. These are at architectural model. That power management by shutting down unused block, we will discuss it later in detail. Now power reduction through circuit or logic design. Reduces switching activity by optimized algorithm. Switching activity is less, dynamic power dissipation is less. Optimized clock and bus loading. Clock is a huge component, clock and bus. Then loading. That that is also optimized. So we are done with this slide. We will move to the next slide, which is basically continuation of this same slide. So power reduction, design space. Now circuit techniques which minimizes number of devices used in the circuit. So minimizing number of devices in the circuit, more number of devices, more power is there. So optimizing the number of devices. Basically, custom design may improve the power. If design is customized, then that can improve the power. Reduce VDD in non-critical paths and proper transistor sizing. Transistor sizing is changing the gate length. Depending on what type of device we need, if we do transistor sizing, that is not all transistors are of having uniform length, gate length. So if we do it, that can help and reduces VDD in non-critical path. If the path is non-critical, then reduction of VDD and use of multi-VT circuit. That is multi-VTH. That is a circuit where not all the devices are identical or that is have same threshold voltage. Using circuit that have devices with multiple VTH. That means different VTH for different application. We will see that in later we will discuss in detail. It's a very good technique, widely used. And finally, power reduction through process technology. One way to reduce the power dissipation is to reduce the power supply voltage. Reduction in VDD increases delay. To match the device with supply voltage, scaling is the option. Now scaling has some advantages in low power design, that is improved current drive capabilities, reduced capacitances through small geometries and junction capacitances, improved interconnect. Some advantages like improved current drive capabilities, reduced capacitance through small geometries and junction capacitors. So scaling is one way. We can reduce VDD and to match with the VDD, we have to scale down the device. So scaling down the device dimension gives some benefit in case of drive current, junction capacitances and small geometry device. So capacitance is reduced. Improved interconnect technology. We will see that in later. Interconnect technology can be improved because interconnect runs for a huge length, so a lot of power dissipates there. That is also one point where we can optimize the power. Availability of multiple and variable threshold devices. Again, mention of multi-VT devices. We will discuss it in details in later. Now, this results in good management of active and standby power trade-off. Higher density of integration. That is huge number of devices integrated. Now, this results in good management of active and standby power trade-off. Active and standby power, that is static and dynamic. So we have to consider both dynamic power and static power. We have to manage both. Power optimization in system level, algorithm level, architecture level, logic or circuit level and device or process level. We are done with this slide. We will move to the next slide. So what are power states? That is a very important concept. You have to understand it. What are power states? Power modes. An IP performs certain functional job. It is designed for that. Obviously, there is a purpose to design an IP. Power is a concern for state-of-art appliances. We must optimize power for IP operation. To optimize and save power, we must understand the usage of the IP first. First, understanding IP, its power optimization. To do power optimization for an IP, we need to understand the IP and its function. Now, we can define different operation modes for an IP and accordingly necessary power would differ. We can define different operation modes for an IP and accordingly necessary power would differ. Thus, operations mode of an IP are also termed as power states since power is related to operation. What kind of operation the IP is doing and how much power it requires depending on, we can define its modes, operational mode. So that is also termed as power states, at which power state it is now working. Now, depending on functional role of an IP, power states are defined and power is saved. Power states are defined and differentiated from each other based on corresponding functional mode. Based on usage, power is reduced and saved. In some cases, power states can have substates. This is a method to save power. Like, try to understand this diagram. There are 3 modes for a device where it can work. That is active mode. It is active mode, maximum usage of power. Then idle. It's not doing anything actively. It's now idle. Although it's not sleeping. Another mode is sleeping. When it's not used, it's basically in sleep mode. and there must be a controlling unit to change its operation. If it's actively required, then it should be in active mode. If not, it will be in idle mode. If even that is not required, then send it to sleep mode. Although there must be a control circuit, when required, the block or the IP can be retrieved from there and we can take it to active mode again. So sleep to idle mode to active mode. The power domain hardware modules, and that is power management strategy, power management IC, PLNs. UPF commands are there. We have already a series on UPF. You can watch it. UPF is basically define its power. It cannot be defined in RTL description. So UPF is a way to define its power states, and that's why UPF is so important. So add power state, create power domain hardware modules, and that is a control unit, how it should work. Power management block is there. First power domain. Here it's a digital block, it's an analog block, it's a macro. Power domain 1, 2 and 3. They don't belong to the same power domain. Depending on the requirement, power is spent on that unit. So this is the concept of power states. So we are done with this slide. We will move to the next slide. Voltage scaling. Supply voltage scaling used to reduce dynamic and leakage power, lower subthreshold current and gate leakage current. Supply voltage scaling is used to reduce dynamic and leakage power, both dynamic and standby power basically. So that lowers subthreshold current and gate leakage current. Optimal point for power saving using this technique is the lowest voltage which the circuit retains its logic state and does not compromise performance. So we have to find that optimal point. If we want to power save by voltage scaling, we have to find that optimal point so that the circuit can retain its logic states and doesn't compromise performance. To achieve low power benefits without compromising performance, two ways of lowering supply voltages can be employed: the static supply scaling and the dynamic supply scaling. There are two methods which we can use. Now, static supply scaling. Multiple supply voltages are used as per operation requirement. That is also called voltage island. Multiple supply voltages are used as operation requirement. Critical and non-critical path and or units reclustered and powered accordingly. Depending on their importance, they are clustered and powered accordingly. And for that, multiple supply voltages are used. Whenever an output from a low VDD unit has to drive an input of a high VDD unit, a level conversion is required at the interface. Critical units, high VDD is used. Non-critical units, low VDD is used, and in between level converters are there because VDD levels are different. Whenever an output from a low VDD unit has to drive an input of a high VDD unit, a level conversion is required. It have to be level up, otherwise it cannot run the input of an high VDD unit. The level converters are inserted in between that. Now, dynamic supply scaling. This technique uses single supply voltage, hence cost is less. Obviously, multiple supply voltages, that is increase in cost. So, dynamic supply scaling use single voltage and cost is less. For that, when performance demand is low, supply voltage and clock frequency are lowered. Substantial power reduction is possible by that. Circuit need to be operable over a wide voltage range. Operating system to intelligently determine the processor speed. Regulator to generate the minimum voltage for specific speed. So depending on the usage and the demand, if the IP is actively working, more power is required. So accordingly, voltage, supply voltage and clock frequency will be set. If it's not working or demand is less, so obviously supply voltage and clock frequency are lowered. So that way substantial power can be reduced. Circuit need to be operable over a wide voltage range, and operating system to intelligently determine the processor speed. Depending how processor speed, operating system must determine the processor speed and accordingly allot the power, and regulator to generate the minimum voltage for specific speed. So this way it works. Voltage scaling is done, and we will move to the next slide. Multi-voltage scaling. First is dynamic voltage and frequency scaling. A large number of voltage levels are dynamically switched to follow changing workloads. So voltage levels are dynamically switched depending on the changing workload. How much workload is on the IP and how much power is needed. A larger number of voltage levels are dynamically switched depending on changing workload. As per the workload is changed, voltage levels are also get changed. So that is dynamic voltage and frequency scaling. scaling that happens dynamically. Another is adaptive voltage scaling. It's an extension of DVFS where a control loop is used to adjust the voltage. These are two techniques for multi-voltage scaling. Now, multi-voltage design challenges. When multi-voltage scaling is done, that is obviously for a design which uses multiple voltage levels. That is obviously not like a design which is using same voltage level or single voltage level. So there are some challenges. So let's discuss about the design challenges. That is multi-voltage design faces, like level shifters, uses of level shifters, signals that go between blocks that use different power rails require level shifter. We have already discussed in last slide. So these are three zones. So if it's going from here to there, a level shifter is required. Signal traveling from this zone to that zone and that zone to this zone. We already have episode on level shifters, and there we have discussed it in detail, how low to high and high to low level shifters are used and all. Article is also available in the blog. Links are in the description. You can watch the video and read the article. So signals that go between blocks that use different power rails require level shifters. Obviously, level shifter need to get used. Now, characterization and STO. Need libraries for each voltage and level shifter configuration. Multiple voltages are used, so library is also required for that. Floor planning, power domains, complex power planning and power grids. Power planning become complex because of multiple power domains and power grids. Now, board level issues need additional regulators to provide additional supplies. Power up and power down sequencing. Obviously, there may be a required sequence for powering up the design. When which one is used, how the design is powered up and powered down, that sequence has to be maintained. So that extra logic parts are also get inserted. That things also we have to consider that thing when we are using multi-voltage design. So these are some challenges comes with it along with some power saving benefit. So we have to consider that also. We are done with multi-voltage scaling. We will move to the next slide. Next topic is power gating. Power gating is a very popular technique to reduce the leakage power. In this technique, a MOSFET switch or slip transistor is used to cut off or gate. Gate means cutting off a circuit from power rails, that is VDD or ground, during standby mode. An extra transistor which is called switch or slip transistor that is used to cut off the circuit from power rails, be it VDD or ground. This happens during standby mode. Standby mode, MOSFETs are not in operating condition to cut off the power supply. The switch typically is positioned as header between the circuit and the VDD or footer between the circuit and the ground. This is the diagram. This is the pull up logic. This is pull down logic. And here one slip or switch transistor. Here is another that is used to cut off this part from VDD, and this one is used to cut off it from the ground. That is the header. The switch, that is header switch, typically positioned as header between the circuit and the VDD, and this is the footer, that is circuit and the ground. Now, power gating has the basic strategy of providing sleep or standby mode and active mode. By power gating, there are two modes are here. The strategy is one, either the circuit is in active mode or it's in sleep or standby mode. During active operation, the power gating switch remains on, supplying the current. Obviously, to turn on this circuit portion, this switch has to be on so that the current flows. Power gating switch remains on, supplying the current that the circuit uses to operate. It's a gate basically. When it's not used, close the gate. During standby mode, turning off the power gating switch reduces the current dissipated through the circuit. So when this circuit is not in operation, turn off the power gating switch, so power is not going there and dissipation will not happen. That is the logic. So we are done with this power gating. Now we will move to the next slide. Now clock tree optimization and clock gating. Clock signal is the most fundamental signal for any digital circuit, and clock signal consumes the most amount of total power because clock signal is present in all sequential blocks. The design of clock network is important in order to make the low power system achieve good functional stability under low leakage. Since clock signal is present in all the sequential cell register level, so how the network is designed, that is also important because clock is basically a signal that is traveling through that network. So signal is traveling, power is getting dissipated there. So optimization of the network structure is also very important. Clock distribution is crucial for timing and design convergence. That is also another point. How that clock signal is distributed, that is critical for timing and design convergence. Now, most of the power is consumed due to high clock frequency used for operating the device. Up to 70% or even more, the dynamic power can be spent in the clock buffers. This is critical problem in every synchronous circuit. 70%, just think 70% or even more of dynamic power spent in the clock buffers. Now, portion of the clock tree that are not being used at any particular time can be disabled to save the power. If that part is not in use, then shut it down. The portion of the clock tree that are not being used at any particular time can be disabled to save the power. This is clock gating, and it's an effective way of reducing the dynamic power dissipation. One of the ways to achieve this is by masking the clock that goes to the ID portion of the circuit. Clock gating is particularly used for registers that need to maintain the same logic values over many clock cycles. The main challenges of clock gating are finding the best places to use it and creating the logic to shut off and turn on the clock at the proper time. There should be a logic to shut off the clock and turn on the clock at the appropriate time. That's the clock source. This diagram is showing it's distributed like this, and this way it's going to leaf level registers also. That is a clock. That is user defined logic is there, clock is getting inserted here, and that is an enable. Depending on that, clock is going here. That logic is important. That logic actually determines whether clock signal will reach here or not. When it's needed, clock signal will reach here. When it's not needed, the clock signal will not reach it. So it's basically gate. That is, clock tree optimization is very important for power saving or power optimization, and clock gating is one method to do it. So we are done with this slide. We will move to the next slide. Now, dual or multi or variable VTH MOSFET. We have already mentioned about dual or multi or variable VTH MOSFET. Now, let's see what are these things. In the present day, process technology allows the fabrication of MOSFETs of multiple VT on a single chip. Dual VT CMOS circuits are used for high performance and low power CMOS circuit. High VT transistors use reduced leakage current and low VT transistor to achieve high performance. There are various fabrication techniques for implementing multiple VT MOSFET in a single chip. Now let's understand these 2 points. Dual VT CMOS circuits is a circuit where 2 types of MOSFET are used having different VT. Not all MOSFET have the same VT. Dual VT CMOS circuit is used for high performance, low power CMOS circuit. Performance is higher, although low power consumed. Dual VT transistors means there are 2 types of transistor. One having high threshold voltage, another having low threshold voltage. So high threshold voltage is used to reduce the leakage current, and low threshold voltage is used to achieve high performance. When threshold voltage is lower, that means leakage is higher, and when VT is high, that means that is leakage of those MOSFETs are less. So 2 types of MOSFET are used. Now, how we achieve that? Multiple channel doping. That is one technique. Commonly used technique for realizing multiple VT MOSFET is to use different channel doping density. Channel doping density can be changed. So that will impact the VT, that is VTH, threshold voltage, by multiple oxide CMOS. VTH has dependence on value of COX. Different COX can be realized by using different TOX, and accordingly VTH will be different. Oxide, if the oxide thickness, gate oxide thickness is different, depending on COX, that is gate oxide capacitance is different, and VTH has a dependence on that. So multiple oxide layer thickness is used. Multiple channel length, that is another way. VTH decreases as the channel length is reduced. That is known as VTH roll-off. This phenomena can be exploited to realize transistors of dual threshold voltage. Channel length can be different. MOSFET with different channel length can be used for different VT. Now, multiple body bias. When the substrate and source has a voltage difference that leads to an increase or decrease of the threshold voltage, biasing can be changed. These are the methods by which multi-VT MOSFET can be achieved. Now, multi-threshold CMOS is a popular power getting approach that uses high VTH devices for power switches. Variable threshold CMOS is a body biasing based design technique. So, variable threshold CMOS can be body biasing. The 4th point, that is substrate substrate and source, depending on the substrate and source voltage difference, VTH could be different. So that can be used for variable threshold CMOS technique. And multi-threshold CMOS is popular power getting approach that uses high VTH devices for power switches. This is basically dual or multi or variable VTH MOSFET. We are done with this slide. We'll move to the next slide. Now transistor stacking. Transistor stacking, another way of optimizing power. Subthreshold leakage current flowing through stack of series connected transistor reduces when more than one transistor in the stack is turned off. This effect is called stacking effect that can reduce subthreshold leakage. Consider two transistor stack. When both M1 and M2 are turned off, the voltage at the intermediate node Vx is positive due to small drain current. Positive potential at the intermediate node has three effects, and that positive potential at this point reduces the leakage, subthreshold leakage current significantly by three ways. First, due to the positive source potential, Vx get to source voltage of this M1 becomes negative. Hence, the subthreshold current reduces substantially. Another point is, since Vx is positive, that is greater than 0, bulk to source potential of the transistor M1 becomes negative. That is also negative, so increasing the threshold voltage of M1. Since threshold voltage is increasing, again that will reduce the subthreshold leakage. And third is, because of Vx greater than 0, the drain to source potential of transistor M1 decreases, increasing VTH, that is less VIB, and thus reducing the subthreshold leakage. Drain to source potential decreases, that means impact of drain to source potential, that is also decreasing. So DIBL is reduced. In this way, the transistor stacking reducing the subthreshold leakage. Now the leakage of a two transistor stack less than the leakage in a single transistor. The transistor stacking can reduce the subthreshold leakage. We are done with this slide, so we will move to the next slide. Special cells and power optimization. Special cells are special because they have some special purpose and they are used for power optimization. Retention cell, isolation cell, level shifter cell, always on cell, their name suggests what they do, and we have detailed episode on level shifter, retention cell, isolation cell. Links are provided in the description. You can watch the videos and read the articles. So first, retention cell. Memories or registers are not capable of keeping their information while powered off. When a particular power domain inside chip is switched off, it's bound to lose its memory. To save such scenarios, special retention cell have been adopted in most of the commercial standard cell library like TSMC, UMC, Global Foundry. They provide commercial standard cell library. They use retention cell to support the state retention power getting. We are saving power or optimizing power by switching off a domain. When a particular domain is powered off, it no longer can retain its state. So there is some retention cells, they remember it. So that is state retention power getting. Retention cells store the last state before power off of a flop inside the power domain. So what does retention cell do? They store the last state before power off of a flop inside the power domain. It allows the system to continue its operation from the last known state and faster wake up of a block. The only drawback is the retention mode consumes little more current than power off mode. It's not completely power off, otherwise that power domain will lose its last state. Where it stopped its operation, from there it has to be wake up. So that last state is saved in a retention cell, and that retention cell required to get powered up, or it required some power. That is the only drawback, that retention mode consumes little more current than power off mode. That is retention cell. Now, isolation cell. Inter-domain signals can become complicated if the connecting interface changes during different power modes. During power getting operation, the circuit will contain few on and off domains together at any point of time. In such a situation, output of off-domain sends invalid signal to the on-domain. To deal with such problematic situation, isolation cell is placed between power-gated block and active block. An isolation cell clamps the signal as its input pin to a defined known state, either logic 0 or logic 1. Hence, transmission of invalid signal is eradicated. So, power gated block are always on block. There is an isolation cell. Why? Because inter-domain signal can become complicated when signal traveling from one domain to another domain, and there's some complication arises if the connecting interface changes during different power modes. During power getting operation, the circuit will contain few on and off domains. Some domains are on and some domains are off together at any point of time. In such a situation, output of an off domain sends invalid signal to the on domain, because the signal is traveling. To deal with such problematic situation, isolation cell is placed. Isolation cell is placed between power gated block, and it just clamps the signal to its input pin to a defined known state, so that no ambiguous or invalid data travels to the on domain. That is isolation cell. So now let's see what are level shifter cells and always on cells. We are done with this slide. We will move to the next slide. In multi-voltage power domain system, the logic gates on non-critical paths are operated with low VDD and gates on critical paths are operated with high VDD. Chip with different supply voltage domains use level shifter to convert and propagate logic signal among different power domains. So, low to high level shifter is used. Power domain 1 VDD is 0.8 and power domain 2 VDD is 1 volt. Low to high level shifter is used from PD1 to PD2. Now PD2 to PD1, high to low level shifter is used. Similarly here 2 volt, one power domain is VDD with 2 volt and another power domain is with VDD 1.2 volt. So high to low level shifter is used from this way to that, and low to high level shifter is used from this way to that. Another one is always on cell, and always on cell in VLSI is designed to always remain powered on and active, regardless of the state of the other cells or input signal to the chip. These cells are typically used to provide critical functions that must be maintained even when the rest of the chip is in low power or sleep mode, such as maintaining a clock or managing power domain. That's the most important part, so that part has to be always powered on. So power cells, always on cells are used there. Such cells are carefully designed to minimize their power consumption while still providing required functionality. Such cells are like normal buffers with an extra secondary always on pin. It's like ordinary buffer, although another pin is there that gives power always. Such cells are carefully designed to minimize their power consumption while still providing required functionality. Such cells are like normal buffers with an extra secondary always on pin to keep the cells on even when primary power is off in a domain. These will remain on through the secondary backup supply pin, which supplies the necessary current when main supply is not available. So it's like an ordinary buffer. Also, there is another extra secondary always on pin, that is backup pin. When the main supply is not available, that backup supply pin provide power to this block or this to cell. So that is always on cell. We are done with this slide. We will move to the next slide. Now interconnect and power optimization. Interconnect power reduction. A circuit consumes switching power P switch when interconnection capacitances are charged and discharged. The interconnect power occupied more than half of the total dynamic power consumption P dynamic, with 90% of is contributed from 10% of the interconnections. To reduce C dynamic, that is dynamic capacitance, larger wear spacing and minimal length routing were implemented for high power consuming interconnects. So interconnects consume huge portion of power, dynamic power. So for that, larger wear spacing and minimal length routing is implemented. Net ordering and wear space optimization. To optimize power consumption, interconnect capacitances must be reduced. That can be achieved by rearranging wear positions, that is net ordering and wear space optimization. Signals with high switching activity share a relatively larger space than those with lower switching activity. When switching activity is higher, the changing state or changing voltage between coupling happens. We have already discussed during interconnect series that coupling happens, and for that we also know low K dielectric is used between interconnects so that interconnect capacitance become less, that we have discussed in low K episode of milestone series. Interconnects with high switching activity, they are placed apart. distance between interconnects with higher switching activity is more compared to those interconnects which have lower switching activity. In between distance is less here and in between distance is higher here. That is called net ordering and wire space optimization. That can be done for power optimization. We are done with this slide and we will move to the next slide. Tools and power optimization. Commercial EDA tools effectively support power management technique. They also provide additional power saving during implementation. So we use commercial EDA tools and all the tools, they effectively support power management technique. They have some features by which they provide additional power saving during implementation also. Low power VLSI design can be achieved at various levels of design abstraction from algorithmic and system level down to layout and circuit level. We already have discussed that. Now varieties of power analysis tools are available to estimate power of a design. All commercial vendors have such tools. The power products are tools that comprise a complete methodology for low power design. Such tools offer power analysis and optimization from RTL to gate level. Some tools provide transistor level power analysis also. Active or switching rate are the base of analysis for some power tools. Depending on activity or switching, power optimization happening. That is the working principle of some tools. In traditional flow, each tool has their own low power design commands, although their code description might be inconsistent, based on which philosophy or how described that might not be consistent. And even in many companies or many design houses, multiple tools from multiple vendors are used for different steps. Not always that a single vendor gives front-end tools or back-end tools. Sometimes front-end tool is procured from one vendor and back-end tools are procured from another vendors. Depending on which kind of design requirement is there, preferences are there also. Code description might not be consistent throughout the flow. So UPF is used in all tools for obtaining consistent low power consumption design requirements. Tools can be automatically inserted according to UPF description during front-end integration. MT-CMOS, that is multi-threshold CMOS, inserted and connected in rear-end realization tool, that is back-end. And complex power connection, control signal connection are automatically realized according to UPF description. The operation is simple and convenient with high accuracy. That's why UPF is so popular, and we have a series on UPF. Link is provided in the description. So UPF is used to bridge this inconsistency among the code description, support power description of different tools. UPF actually bridge that gap and inconsistency, and that's why UPF is very important. So all tools have their power optimization technique implemented. We are done with this slide and we are done with today's discussion. Today we have discussed about different optimization technique. It's overview. We have not discussed it in detail. In later episodes, we will discuss few of them in details. Thank you for watching up to this point. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. In case you have any question, please put it as a comment. If you have a dislike, also put it as a comment. Thank you again and bye for today.